county that does a pretty good job of taking care of itself.
And that's exactly the examples that I was talking about earlier, thanking all the department heads and all the employees.
Maybe it's because this county is always in a disaster, it's just sometimes it really
Okay.
So I don't know what you wanted to present in terms of your transition plan.
We can keep it very brief. About 80% of what else might be on the draft. The master plan for 09 has been incorporated into the discussion draft master calendar that we distributed a bit ago. And we would just look for any preliminary feedback with regard to scheduling and with regard to the board's rules of procedure. And having some preliminary dialogue on the rules, some of the things that are being contemplated, and these will all be presented in a final draft form for action January 6th. There's interest in perhaps rearranging the order of proceedings on board days to start with open session and have a timed public expression period, and then followed by a timed closed session period late morning before the lunch recess. So we're contemplating with board members the ideas of possibly doing business differently in order of events on board days. And with regard to the calendar, much of what we've done this past year would be reflected in this calendar. We'll have at least 2 drafts for your consideration. A couple of topics that we haven't put forward yet are ideas that have come up throughout the year. One, request for a work session on air quality management district. A request for a work session between the board and the retirement system. There's been mention of a request for a board/City of Ukiah joint meeting. So there are things like that that we will pull together those notes and directives over the past several months and have items brought forward for discussion on the 6th. So we just wanted to see if there was any immediate feedback that any of you had that you'd like us to have an awareness of as we're building some of these draft materials for the organizational meeting. And if not, we'll just proceed.
Jim, Howard Deschelle is not here, but he wanted me to be sure the first off-site meeting would like to discuss this with Supervisor Colfax. Point Arena, we have 2 issues, one having to do with the potential casino, another one with the streetscape project that's going on that would be timely for us if we could do in March or April at the latest for an off-site meeting. So he wanted to make sure the board was aware of that request by transportation. And that, excuse me, she's right, also relates to Windy Hollow Bridge and the federal application that we have to do on that.
Okay. Just a couple of comments to what Chrissy mentioned. The one in regards to the joint meeting between the City of Ukiah, if it is to be a specific item, my wish for the future board would be that it would be set up in such a way to not get the hell beat out of the board like we have in the past. The 2 previous joint meetings still stick in my craw, but it was a very specific subject, and so if there's a way to maybe have more of a well-rounded subject matter agenda, be able to come to common ground, those type of things on many different aspects instead of just getting the heck beat out of us on one specific thing. For the board, I think it would be beneficial to be able to put the past in the past and move ahead. So that type of a situation. And forgot what the other subject was, so we'll just move along.
Mr. Chair, Phil Dow from MCOG has requested we do an AB 1600 joint meeting, and that might be a good candidate for a joint meeting to talk about.
Okay.
When I would just, the meeting that I kind of somewhat arbitrarily stuck in July, that's the meeting that Phil Dow was talking about, the idea of looking at AB 1600 and all the other associated sorts of fees and decisions that would need to be made, because you've got people working in a lot of different directions. You've got fire impact fees, you've got school impact fees, etc. So that was the idea behind that summit. But you can do little pieces of it, you can do big pieces, etc. So that's that one. I was going to mention that previous meetings with the City of Ukiah related specifically to UBAC, and so doing something on a broader basis could open up a larger discussion and maybe not focus it in so much on that particular issue. There was a joint meeting with the retirement board, and my understanding was it was the first time that it had ever been done, and that was sometime in late 2005 or early 2006. And so we've got a kind of a history of making something like that happen. So I wanted to mention that. And then there was another thing. What was the third?
Air quality.
Air
Work
quality.
session.
Okay. That, I think that anytime you want to focus on a specific department or area, that's certainly a possibility.
This is rather specific, but by law, we've got two members, 2 or 3 of us on the first fire commission from the county. There's a member of staff or administration, and there's one supervisor, but it's a little bit embarrassing because we've been jamming our meetings up against their meetings, and for the county to keep failing to be there and so forth. Allison's had even a tighter schedule than I've had, but I would like at least some effort being made so we can make 2 out of 3 meetings between us, I would hope, because it is an important element, and it just doesn't look good when either of us are there a couple meetings in a row because we've jammed everything into Monday afternoon. And, we make allowances for MCOG first Monday. I think we owe it at least to the first 5 commission, which has a broader representation of volunteer commissioners. And I think that's a different, we're non-attached, non-specific volunteers. I think it's important that we show up a little more often. I think Allison would agree.
Yeah, I was hoping though that we could do this schedule first and see what is around it.
Right, and to tag on to David's comments, I've had the same feeling with the AAA, the Area Agency on Aging, and we help bring about that new generation of taking care of the senior citizens through that AAA. And I've been unable for the last several months to make any meetings. And so for the future board to maybe possibly consider the rules governing the makeup of that board to maybe allow for an alternate, like Lake County has for the board member, and or maybe change in the style of appointment to not have a supervisor at all, and maybe have an appointed by the supervisor's member to represent Mendocino County. Just a thought to be able to have a member there at all times. So just kind of a little twist on the membership. And the other item I had before I go to Johnny was the 5:30 rule. We brought up board rules and procedures. I would ask that the future board be respectful and in consideration of business every day, and maybe take a look at modifying the 5:30 rule at the end of the day, maybe prior notice or something, instead of just throwing out an ace in the hole type of thing to end the day, and still have remaining work to be done. So if it's going to be used, maybe have an alternative plan on how to finish out the rest of the agenda business. The next day as a continuance, et cetera, just a thought. Supervisor Pinchas.
Well, I don't really support having workshops, or whatever you want to call them, for the board to be educated on different issues, whether it's just transportation. I think it's the obligation of each individual board member to be educated on we can have a workshop every day of the year on a different issue dealing with local government. I mean, whether it's transportation, health and human services, and all the areas of